It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is CEO Leticia Latino-van Splunteren. Leticia was born and raised in Venezuela by Italian immigrant parents, so she's always been exposed to a multicultural approach to life and business. When she graduated with a BS in Business Administration, people assumed she would go straight into Neptuno, the company her father had founded in 1972. However, she had other ideas and decided to take a different path and work for two major multinational companies and achieved her MBA before joining the family business. Leticia Latino, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks so much for having me.
Great to have you here today. Well, as you know, we kind of like to get started to hear a little bit about the early years. And if you could tell us a little bit about where you grew up and, what your family life was like. It sounded like you grew up with an entrepreneur as well in the family.
Oh, yes, I did. I did. Yes, I was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela. And but my parents, as you mentioned, they are both Italian. So I had a little bit, I always feel I have to kind of explain that, I'm Venezuelan, but I'm coming from a family where in my household, everybody spoke Italian. There is Italian traditions. My mom actually made it to Venezuela right after they got married. She was 29, so she was already, grown up.
Established.
Yes, but we had a very happy upbringing. I have two siblings and, happy life. Venezuela was a very different country back then.
Yes. Well, we spoke a little bit before the podcast. I had the opportunity to visit Venezuela in the late 90s. And I remember it's a very much a country of immigrants, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what makes it different is really it's a lot of people like my parents. I'm the first generation Venezuelan.
Right.
We are still very connected. I only had like one aunt in Venezuela. Everybody else is in Italy. And so it's a very interesting mix. And but my parents, they love the country so much that they're still there, believe it or not.
They're still there. Oh,
yes.
Gosh. Now, what motivated them to immigrate from Italy to Venezuela? And were they in their 20s when they did so, or did they come over as children?
No, they were in their 20s. My dad was, I think, 24 or 25. So it was 1960, more or less. And basically, Italy after Second World War was, not in very good shape. And he's from, or they're both are rather from the island, from Sicily. And so even worse there, as in any country, they weren't from the capital or anything like that. So a lot of immigration going to South America. And my dad's sister ended up marrying an Italian also that found a job there in Venezuela on the utility company. So my dad being the young guy, I'll go and check it out and see. And so he saw so many opportunities there that he ended up, not being able to leave.
Just staying. And did they kind of leave everything back in Sicily? Was it one of those types of immigrations, or were they able to, bring some of their, belongings and so forth along with them? Or were they at the age where it didn't really matter much?
Yeah, I think that's more of the case. Yes, my dad didn't have much. And then my mom, they were going back, and my dad would go back and forth to visit his family. And then he met my mom. And in 4 months, I tell her she was very courageous because because in 4 months he said, you either come back with me or you stay here. And so my mom moved to a country where she didn't know anybody, didn't
Wow.
know the
Didn't know the
language.
language.
There
Yeah,
was no
yeah.
email, no WhatsApp, back on those days. So I say, wow, you were really brave. And she was 29 more or less when that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Great. So he
yes,
brought her back basically and said, let's start a
yes,
family. Wonderful.
yes.
And you said brothers and sisters as well?
Yeah, I have an older brother and a younger sister. I'm 44, so we're right there. He's almost getting to 50. So, my brother is in Venezuela, still leading our company there with my dad, who's 83, and he still works every single day of his life. And my sister is in Florida.
Now, did they start Neptuno? Is that the business that they were running when your father came over, or what led to his entrepreneurial pursuits?
Yeah, no, when he first moved, my uncle, that was the driver, was involved in some utility projects in Venezuela, and their stories are, I mean, I just have a blast when I hear my dad's stories because there was no electricity in most of the country, so they really went for months at a time to deploy the utility network, the electrical network of Venezuela. And so they did a lot of in-field experience they gathered. And then kind of my dad saw the opportunity to venture out into telecom. And so my uncle stayed on the electrical and on the utility, and then my dad went into installing telecom towers.
Okay, got it, got it. And he did that on his own then.
Yeah, he did that completely on his own. He's not an engineer of any sort, so that's the other thing I always say. Wow, how you achieve this? Because it's a very technical industry. So, but he saw the opportunity and he surrounded himself with good people. That's what he always says has been one of the key to successes, and that's how he did it.
Now, we mentioned in your bio that it was always assumed you would go into the business. Did you get involved in the business at an early age?
Yes, absolutely. If you go to our webpage, I actually in the note from the CEO, I put a picture of my mom, my pregnant mom, with me at a construction site. And this is what my dad was. These were the Sunday road trips for my dad. He would find some reason what to say. Oh, let's go here, and it sounded exciting. And all of a sudden, you are in a construction site and say it will be 2 minutes. We'll be short. And so yeah, we since very little, he was always taking us to the office and finding little things there that we can do to help.
Who were some of the other early influences in your life? It sounds like mom and dad played a big role.
Mom and dad play a huge role. The family, obviously, as in any Sicilian environment, they sent us to Catholic schools. So definitely not so much religion, but definitely they develop a spiritual curiosity. So definitely I've always liked to read about, leaders and I mean, even younger, like the history or the story of the Pope and that kind of stuff. I was always looking into inspirational stories like that. But I would say my dad has always been more of an inspiration in terms of what I wanted to achieve. And my mom is the perfect housewife, and so yeah, so devoted. So I always say I have it hard because if I compare myself to my dad on the business realm of things, it's hard to succeed, at surpassing him. And then as a mom, I'm a mom of two. I want to do things like my mom did it,
Right,
and then it's
right.
almost impossible to reconcile, work with the home.
Right. Well, you said it sounds like you had two great role models. Was your mother involved in the business as well, or did she focus pretty much on the kids?
No, just on the kids.
So you mentioned Catholic school. I assume that was probably a Jesuit school, was it, or what was the?
It's Teresiana. Is from Therese de Avila,
Right. Okay.
San Therese.
Saint Teresa. Yeah.
Yes, and but yeah, it's a pretty traditional all girls school.
Nuns teaching the
Nuns,
classes. Right.
yes,
Got it.
nuns, all girls. I was there for 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
from pre-K to high school.
Were you a good student?
I was a good student, yes, I have to say. I
Was
was.
it kind of the situation where the nuns would wrap your knuckles if you weren't?
Well, yes, some of them did. Yes, I was. My only problem in school was that I'm very social person. So the nuns would always tell me if there was a subject called corridor, because I was always found in the corridor, I would have an A+. That was their main
Oh, that's too
problem.
funny.
Yes,
So they put you outside, right? You
yes, they
sat
would
out the
always.
corridor.
Yes, and they were frustrated because I got great grades and I was class president, and so they wanted to kind of tell me, you're not gonna do good, but I was doing good.
And were there outside of school opportunities, any sports? You mentioned class president. What other types of extracurricular were you involved with growing up?
I always was interested in languages, so very early, even in high school, I was doing extra English classes at the British Council. And then I was doing music. I played the guitar, not really great. Now, eventually, I married an engineer that is also a musician, so he would say, "No way, you don't play the guitar." He, oh, but I do play the guitar with the nuns. I learned that much.
I can imagine. So Italian at home and then Spanish in school, I presume, right?
Yes, yes.
And I noticed you speak French as well. Where did you pick that up?
Well, I started when I was like 30, more or less. I always have bucket lists of things I want to do. And so I started going to Alliance Francaise here in
Of
Florida.
course, yeah.
And then with Nortel, I went through a very interesting layoff experience at Nortel. And when that happened, I took 6 months off and went to France and lived there.
Ah, good for you. Good for you. What's on your bucket list today, Leticia?
Oh, retire on a sailboat or something like
You're
that.
too young for that. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. Skydiving still in my.
Skydiving.
I've done bungee jump out of the tallest tower in the Western Hemisphere.
Oh
That's
my
600
goodness.
feet in New Zealand. But now that I'm a mom, I say I should have done the sky jump before, because now it's hard with small kids to do it. But maybe learn Dutch.
There you
That's
go.
one thing.
That's good. That's good. And well, we talked about that as well. That I speak that language, and it is a very difficult one to learn. But I will give you a hint. There is a school in Vught, Holland, that used to be actually taught by nuns. It's a language school, and you go in an intensive type of a way, and it is probably the best way. I knew that I could speak Dutch fluently after I started dreaming it in about 3, 4 days. So it is that type of an environment. But you'd be back with the nuns again, so maybe that's not a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm done with that stage.
Any entrepreneurial things when you were growing up? It sounds like you were taken to the office, and I'm probably sure did some things around, the office. But were there any things that you did, or was that really not so much the opportunity for you growing up in Venezuela?
Yeah, you hit it on the nail. When you grow up in Venezuela, even in my time, it was still somehow dangerous. So
Right,
when I see
right.
kids and my kids tell me, let's go sell cookies, or
Yeah,
let's
paper
do
route.
the
Yeah.
lemonade stand and all that, I kind of envy that, because it's something so cool that a good chunk of the kids here in the States that are somehow privileged to live in safer neighborhoods get to do. But in Venezuela, even if you live in a good neighborhood, you wouldn't get to do
It
that.
wouldn't be something you would do.
But
Yeah.
I did back in school with the nuns. They would give us in the recreation time like some like fundraising activities to do. And so with a friend of mine, we put up like a bowling alley in one of the corridors with those fake pins, the plastic pins. And
Back to the corridor.
yeah, I'm telling you.
You spent enough time out there. You
I
had some
literally
ideation going on.
that was my house.
I
so
love it. And
so
then you
yeah,
charge people to play bowling in
yes,
the corridors. Oh, I
yes.
love it.
And we were
That's
supposed to
great.
do it for like 1 week, but it resulted that a lot of people like to spend the extra buck at the bowling. We had little like toys that were giveaways, and yeah, it worked out for like a year.
That's fun. That's fun. So, was college always in your plan? Was that something that your parents expected you to do, or something that you had an insight about there in Venezuela?
Yeah, absolutely. College was never even debatable for my parents. The graduate school was, and in fact, I'm the only one from my siblings that went to graduate school. But college was like, there's no reasoning with that.
It was assumed you would.
Yes,
Right,
yes, it
right.
was.
And both your siblings did as well.
Yes, we had I had a little bit of a challenge because my dad. Now I thank him for that, but I wanted to study law, and he steered me into business. So
Yeah, yeah. So that was his motivation. That was my next question. You chose the major more by your dad's guidance.
yes, yes, and looking back, he used to say if you study law and then you cannot move countries, you always talk to Venezuela because then you can only practice here, and unless you go through a very lengthy process. And now I see it with some of my friends that have to had to leave Venezuela, and now it's not that easy. All the people that are dentists and architects, sometimes you need to sign in the country where you're designing. And so with business has been very simple to move.
Yes, exactly. The principles are the same. What was the first job you took out of college, or did you go straight to grad school?
No, so the interesting thing is, and that's where I've always kind of, my dad says, I tremble when Leticia says, Daddy, you know what I've been thinking? Because they say nothing good comes after that. So back in undergraduate, when I was doing my bachelor, there was an optional internship that you could do. And a friend of mine had found about this opportunity in Miami to go do the internship for MTV. So we both
Ah,
applied. Sounded so excited. I get excited even now when I say. But so the truth is, no, none of. I mean, we didn't get it. And but at that time, I was so satisfied. Oh, it would be nice to go to Miami
to
and
Miami,
do
right,
an
right.
internship.
That came on the bucket list, it sounds like.
Yes, and Venezuelans, if you go into the history, we've always had a very tight relationship with Miami. A lot of Venezuelans in the good years bought apartments here, and we're familiar. So I was very familiar with Miami, and I planted the seed. And I told my dad, I really think I want to do an internship there. Is any of your friends able to help me? And so it happens he had a good friend at Merrill Lynch that then become, I consider him my mentor today because he guided me into a few directions that were really pivotal. And he said, you know what? Yeah, with her background and all that, I think I can get her an internship. So he did. And I spent the 3 months here in Merrill Lynch, Miami. And that was my first real, let's say, job or yeah, and that turned out well because I met so many people in the virtual corridor because that's been my thing,
Right, right, exactly.
that I met some of the brokers in the Caracas office through the phone just by doing deals with them, and they offered me a job on my last year of college.
Fantastic.
So
So
I
you
went back.
returned
Exactly.
and returned to Crocus. Fantastic. And then how many years did you work before you went back for your master's?
Not right away. Like three days after I did my dissertation, I started, and this was this mentor, the guy that got me the job at Merrill Lynch, my first internship. I was here on April. I was graduating in July. He said you have to go right away to get your graduate degree, and you're gonna get two. University of Miami has this great program, and you do 2 degrees in one, and people are anybody has one master, he said, and now you have to take two, get ahead of everybody.
Good for you.
And it
Good for
was
you.
great advice. And so I went after that year, I graduated, I went straight to graduate school.
Got it. Got it. And then have you been to the States ever since, or did you return to Caracas after your MBA and your master's?
Yeah, in 96, that I came in 96, and I returned briefly after that Nortel experience I mentioned. When I had the opportunity to go to France, I went back home. That's when we made the decision. My dad had been begging me, not begging. If he hears this, he say, I didn't beg. No, he was asking me to consider opening an office in the US and opening the US branch. And I said, if I'm going to do that, I have to go back and I have to learn. Really, I have to go to the factory with you, and I have to, if I need to have a smart conversation about towers. And yes, I was raised in that environment, and I always tell people, not many people can say they were really born into it, and I was in a way. But from there to really lead the company and have the knowledge that you need to have is a very different thing. So I went back for a year and a half to do that, and then when I came back, we opened Neptuno USA.
I see. And did you have leadership responsibilities then when you came back, or was it more of kind of a orientation during that period? When did you start, managing people?
Yeah, I did start managing the international team, the sales team. It wasn't big, but he put that right there under my wing, so to speak. And I think, and that probably is a podcast on itself into how can family business be successful in terms of the relationships,
You knew
right?
where my next question was going to go. How difficult was that? Because I can imagine many of these managers that you were running had probably been with the company a long time, had worked with your dad, and then this, young upstart, daughter comes along. Were you accepted straight away?
That's, I don't know. That's a question for them. I always wonder. I think you are accepted because, and thank God we treat people, very, I treat everybody the same and equal as me. And our general manager, believe it or not, has been with my dad since he was 19, and he's still in the company. So he's been with us for like 40 years. So they call it the fourth son,
Yes,
the
right,
fourth kid.
right.
And I think me and my siblings have always recognized that it's someone that's not from the family, but was the right hand for my dad for so many years, that we treat him like that. I always treat him like,
With respect.
you know more than me because you've been here longer, and but I do think that people just go into oh, she's the daughter of the owner, he's the son of the owner, and you have it a little tougher. You really have to work harder to get people respect.
What were some of the earliest leadership lessons you learned from the business, Leticia?
From our business.
Yes, going back, this is after your, graduate program and, doing that training and then coming obviously over to the States. Do you recall some of the things that were important in terms of running the business?
Yes, I tried to. By then, obviously I had spent like almost 5 years at Nortel, so I did have the ability to see, great leaders, great executives. I also saw some others that weren't that great.
Bad examples. Sometimes those are some of the most lasting, aren't they?
Yes, especially, if I don't know how much you know about Nortel history, but it was a company that went from
Yes.
120,000 employees to bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
it was
Yeah.
over a period of years, and it was one of the biggest companies in Canada and in the world in terms of the telecom industry. And I saw how that whole process was handled so poorly different situations, that I learned a lot in terms of leadership. And one of the things, and I see it in my dad too, it's you have to be as transparent as you can with the people you lead. Sometimes, obviously, you cannot tell, the whole strategy to your team, or you cannot just divulge all the company information. But there are ways where you can let them know, listen, we're not going through good times. Everybody, like brace for impact. We don't know what's going to happen. Or there's ways that you can make them comfortable. And so that being transparent, treating people like, if I would want to know about this, then I try to share as much as I can share, to make them as comfortable as I can.
Right, right. And what were some of the observations that you had at Nortel that you think have best served you in your role now at Neptuno?
Well, definitely, what I was discussing from the bosses that knew how to lead it, treat everybody like you're equal, like a person. They probably, if you have a concern, they probably have the same concern, and the fact that you're the boss doesn't mean that that they're not thinking about this, or they are not deserving of the same treatment. And I have people. Well, in my own case, I knew my whole team, which was a great team actually, all top talent, was going to be laid off. We were like 46 people. My boss had just moved from Washington 6 months earlier, and he also got laid off. And so it was not a matter of performance, or it was just the situation the company was in. But because they were honest with me into what was going to happen, then I said, you know what, I want to leave anyway. So if this is going to happen, and I'm thinking already that I want to join the family business, it's almost like, don't sweat it. Don't get me into three different lists, because I would see lists of people going around. And I said, just I volunteer and got my package and could plan it. And so that gave me an insight into how different that experience was for me, than from someone that was kept in the dark until the last minute, and then they came with security to pick him up and escort him out the building.
Brutal. Yeah.
It's brutal. Exactly. You don't recover from that.
No, no.
So that's kind of the leadership I had, and I was very blessed that I had two great, one direct, one dotted line bosses that stood with me throughout the process, and it was a good outcome. I think it made me stronger in a good way rather than break me, because I've seen some people that, as I say, they were almost traumatized by the experience.
Well, that's good to hear that you were treated well. How would you say your leadership style has evolved over time?
Well, I definitely have gotten more relaxed.
That's good.
Yes, I think that part of what you were mentioning before, if it was hard to prove to people, I think when family environments, you are so focused on proving to people that you are deserving, that you have the experience, that you paid your dues, so to speak, and have earned the position. Then that also inherently comes with some little anxiety and some uh, impatience. You become a little impatient, and now I definitely am. I'm more set in I'm more comfortable in my own skin, and so I'm definitely more of a relaxed leader, I'd like to think. And I listen more, as you know. I like to talk, as I say, my corridor experience, and so I've learned to listen more, which is something that I definitely, when you highlight what can I do better, I think it's important to listen to your team, and then just try to bake whatever they need into the formula for where you want to go with them.
Well, you're currently CEO of Neptuno USA. You mentioned that you started that operation here, correct? So
That's
what year
correct.
was that?
That's 2002.
2002. Got it. And so you weren't automatically or immediately CEO. So your father was overall CEO during that period, or was there another CEO before you came into that role?
No, he was a CEO. I was executive vice president for like 10 years. I was recently promoted like 2 years ago.
Right, right. No, I noticed that in your bio. Right. So it's just been a couple of years there. So how many people now are in the organization that you manage?
Our organization is about all international, 250 people. We have a lot here our office is not a big office. We're about 10 people. But it's really, we are an international operation. And we have a lot of, strategic partners such as Ericsson, like big companies that we outsource resources from and to.
So you're working with a lot of different partnerships as well in the field, I would imagine,
Yes.
right? Because you're still in the
Yes.
tower business. How do you decide if it's time to micromanage, or when to stay out of the sandbox with someone that reports directly to you?
That's a great question because, I think some people would say I'm a little bit of a micromanager, but there's nothing I hate more than micromanage people. Like, if I could have everybody being a go-getter, really hands-on, proactive, I would be so happy. But the truth is that when I see that people are not being resourceful on it, like when they're taking no, the first no they get, then that's where I start micromanaging a little bit, because I know we're not getting the best result we can get. And so when I see that kind of behavior, when people are just not trying to influence, this has become, everything is about influencing outcomes. And so when sometimes there's certain individuals, they just want the first excuse they get to, like, oh no, this couldn't be done. That's it. That's when I start micromanaging.
Yeah, that's the time to zoom in. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on building a company culture. You've been involved in the operation here in the U.S. for, gosh, almost 16 years and now lead it. Do you proactively do so? And do you think about company culture as part of, kind of your legacy as CEO?
Absolutely. When you're almost kind of inheriting, or, when you're part of the family business, you do have a culture already defined in a way. But now me and my siblings are more involved, although my dad is still involved in our headquarters. He's still in Venezuela, and he goes to the office. I mean, he went to Italy 3 days ago, and I called my mom at 10 a.m. and I say, can I say bye to dad? And he said, oh, he's in the office. And and I say, I cannot believe a guy at 83 that is making, a trip to Europe the same day, he still goes to the office right before going to the airport. I mean, that's
Dedicated.
dedicated and passionate. I think definitely that's where the passion, it's super important. So that I want to kind of keep in the company culture. But as the new generation leads on, we are in a transformational process also, where I also want to make people, like engage and understanding that we can grow this to the next level. Because when we formed Neptuno USA, it was never really targeting at the US, so to speak. Like, it was more to serve our international customers, which a lot of them are in the Caribbean, and Central America. And that's why, we are a lot of people outside the US, but in the US, we're still not super big. And so now, recently, I actually made the company a women-owned company. So, so yeah, so we got the WBENC certification, yeah, last year, and that's really our response into, we want to play in the US market, and that could be like a really, interesting angle that we're gonna try to attack, as a women-owned company in telecom, which there are not that many.
No, no, that should help you a lot. Yeah,
Correct. And,
fantastic.
and so now I want to also create the culture for Neptuno USA, with the basis of what my father's culture or ambition has been, but it has to be some sort of a new culture too.
Yeah, makes good sense. Leticia, what do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in?
Well, definitely, I look for people that are engaged, that are passionate. I have to feel the passion when they speak. They have to get me excited. Like, okay, I want to work with this person. That's, I guess, the main trait I look for, and the commitment, of course.
That passion is so common. I would say almost with every CEO, it's come up at somewhere in the interview, how they were passionate about what they did. And as you've just said, how you look for that in others. It makes such a difference. So many times I say in my recruiting efforts, give me an ounce of passion for a pound of brains. I need someone who's just really excited about coming into this opportunity. And, it's okay if they make mistakes, right? But if they're excited and they're obviously, committed to making that happen, that's the kind of energy you want.
Absolutely. And not only being the CEO, I think every CEO should have this, but also as an entrepreneur. And when it's your own business, you really cannot afford to lose the passion. It's something that's really non-negotiable. So you want your team to be on the same boat.
Right. Are you doing a lot of hiring now as you expand your operations to the Caribbean, Central America, and then the U.S.?
Yeah, we definitely gonna do more hiring here in the U.S. now that this new venture embarked. We have a few new exciting opportunities in the smart city play. We just recently announced we created Neptuno Smart Solutions. So that's a brand new company, and so we've created two new companies in the past 2 weeks. Smart Tech
Congratulations.
Port and Neptuno. Thank you very much. And it's just to address what's going to happen in the smart city movement. It's going to be huge. So we definitely are looking into that.
Do you get involved in some of the interviewing? And if so, how do you interview and hire?
Yes, I do get involved. I normally, we start with the people that the person are going to be more involved with, like direct reports. But then eventually, yes, I want to have the one of the final says. And I take it very conversational, just like what we're doing. I try to get my own gut feeling about the candidate, and see if it could be a good match for the kind of company we are. Also, because you're stuck in a segment that I guess, for ROI and for your own company, which is like the middle market. It's like you're not you cater to companies that are not huge, but that are also really not small. So, and that requires a very specific kind of talent.
Well,
And I
very much
think,
so, yeah. And
yeah,
culture plays a big part in it too, doesn't it, Leticia? You have
absolutely.
to look for people that have that kind of background. So let's just take a hypothetical. If you are hiring someone, and let's say it's not a direct report, which is, of course, a much higher level of commitment to you, but maybe it's a direct report of one of your direct reports, let's say one level down, and you only had about 5 minutes to interview that person. What would you ask them?
Definitely will ask. One of the things I like to ask is, what's the biggest career risk they have taken? because it's important to me. As I mentioned before, when I decided, that okay, Nortel is going through this thing, they offer me a job to stay, but I say there's no way. And even now, I take risks to stay with the family company, because not for nothing, you get job offers and you say, don't you get tired, and you work for the business, and there's a risk to keep committing every day to the family business, especially in our situation where we have the Venezuelan background that we're having. I mean, we had one of the worst years in terms of running any business that it's connected somehow to Venezuela. It has been extremely challenging. And that can take a toll, and then you can say, oh, I can go somewhere else and it's just going to be so much easier. Excuse me. So, but I like to learn about the person and what they consider their biggest risk has been into their career, and dig into that.
Yeah, yeah, great. Well, Leticia Latino-van Splunteren, this has been a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. We have one last question we ask all the CEOs, and that's got, what kind of career and life advice would you give to someone who has their eyes on the corner office, or perhaps wants to be an entrepreneur like yourself?
Well, in terms of if you're not related to the company, I would definitely say don't eye the office, but just work like you would normally work. Because when you're too focused on the end goal, you forget the journey's happening. And then I think this happens all the time with people I see, that they lose track of what they're trying to achieve. And I'm at the point in my career after 20 years that is almost coming full circle of people I've met, meetings I've had, and the consistency that I can say I've had, I think is paying off now, because people know what they're getting when they sit in a table with me, and they know we haven't been, all over the place, or trying to portray to be something we are not, and if I can go back to one of the things that one of my bosses at Nortel did, that I say, okay, this is something I don't want to do, is to be selfish in your job. When you're selfish and you care only about what you want, eventually it catches up with you, and people know that. And so for anyone wanting to have the corner offers to become a CEO, you have to be, eager to be interested in the people that work for you.
Right, right. That's a good life lesson.
Absolutely. And for an entrepreneur, is don't surrender. They say it over and over and over, and it sounds like a joke, but they say, the only way to get where you want to go is to waking up every day, even if you have failure, and try a different angle.
That's right.
And at some point, that angle is going to be the one that brings you success.
Leticia, thank you once again for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you so much, Brent.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.